All right. Hello, and welcome to the Dr. Joseph Warren Historical Society interview series with prominent authors and historians specializing in the colonial period and revolutionary America. Now, my name is Randy Flood, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Christian Despigna, author of The Life and Death of Dr. Joseph Warren, the American Revolution's Lost Hero. Now, this presentation is brought to you in cooperation and in partnership with the Real American Revolution Television, Public Television series, and the American Revolution Consortium for Civic Education. So, Christian, let's get on with it and let's introduce our guest today.
Thanks, Randy. Jonathan Lane has more than 30 years experience in public history, tourism, and cultural programming. While his employment has led him to many leading institutions, including Plymouth Plantation, the American Antiquarian Society, Berklee College of Music, and now the Massachusetts Historical Society, his historical studies have taken him to libraries and archives throughout the U.S. and the United Kingdom. He's the author of numerous small monographs and the editor of From the Potomac to the Etowah, the Civil War Correspondence of Alonzo Hall Quint. Currently, Jonathan is the coordinator of Revolution 250, a consortium of more than 60 organizations across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, partnering together on the commemoration of the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. Jonathan, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks, Randy. How are you both?
Right, great.
Delighted to have you.
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan, let's begin by talking about the Massachusetts Rev 250 and the role of the Massachusetts Historical Society. Why don't you tell us how it all began?
Sure. Actually, it began back really in 2015 when a group of academics came together and decided that if they were going to commemorate the American Revolution for Massachusetts, of course, and actually for the greater New England region in particular, the story for us is really about the road to independence. Much of the physical activity, many of the notable events that happened prior to July of 1776 occur in New England. Now, I don't want to say that, it ends with the Declaration of Independence because, as we all know, the story goes on. And even in Massachusetts, there are many, many Revolutionary War stories to be told after 1776. But in 2015, they got together to put together a 250th commemoration of really the formation of the Sons of Liberty, which came about sort of in an ad hoc way in August of 1765 with the repeal of the Stamp Act. And the Sons of Liberty got together and they hung 108 lanterns from the Liberty Tree, what became known as the Liberty Tree. And, the evening was filled with celebrations and speeches and fireworks and all kinds of things. And so they put together this event back in 2015 as a way to sort of kick things off. And once that event was over, and it was, a very great event, very successful, they realized they needed to put the whole commemorative process on a firmer footing. And so they got together some core constituencies in the city of Boston and beyond, and decided to put together Revolution 250, which started out as a consortium of about 25 groups. We're now over 60 organizations statewide, ranging from historical sites and museums, but also societies devoted to the study of the American Revolution, and of course, many of the hereditary societies that people are familiar with, the Daughters of the American Revolution, the Sons of the American Revolution, the Society of Cincinnati, etc.
Awesome.
Yeah, Jonathan, just picking up on that, we know the big year for the celebrations is going to be the 1776 anniversary. But what revolutionary activity is Massachusetts? Most of the revolutionary activity in Massachusetts occurred prior to that, as we know. What's Revolution 250 planning between now and 2026? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are the obvious big hits that people are expect, and we do have an obligation to meet public expectations in that way. So looking sort of regionally, we have the burning of the Gaspee, which will take place in 2022. We've been talking with some potential partners down on Rhode Island to help facilitate a commemoration of that. 2023 will be the Boston Tea Party. And then, of course, 2025, the floodgates sort of open, and you've got Lexington and Concord, you've got Bunker Hill, and actually even before that in 2024, you've got the powder alarms, you've got Leslie's
Right.
March early in 2025. There's a lot of different events that will occur, and we're actually looking at 3 areas to focus on, and that would be the commemorative events, of course, which we all want to do, both large and small. 2024 is a big year also, which, Mary Beth Norton, I know you've had her on,
Yeah.
and you've spoken about the year 1774, and Ray Raphael has a wonderful book on 1774. And so a lot of those events, people are planning. I spoke to a fellow in Sutton the other day. They're planning a 500-man march from Sutton to Worcester in 2024, which is what happened in 1774. So there's a lot of events, great and small. We want to do something around the formation of the Provincial Congress in 1774, because for me, as a historian, I have to say that I see that event as one of those watershed events that really drove the narrative towards independence. It's really the moment when the people of Massachusetts said, we don't need royal authority to set up government. We can do that on our own. Now, they did this with the aid and authority of the Continental Congress behind them. So they did recognize that, there has to be a higher authority for a gathering of states. But here they were setting out, their own rules. They essentially threw out everything that had gone before, went back to the charter and the natural rights, which they all espoused, the individual rights, and worked from there to build the Commonwealth we celebrate today.
Yeah, and can you talk a little bit about some of the other organizations that are involved or partnering with Revolutionary 250 to plan and organize the anniversary? And for example, could you talk about what you have referred to as the cross Commonwealth approach to the commemoration?
Yeah, and it's really important for people to understand, both in Massachusetts and beyond, to understand that when we talk about the revolution and those major events that I spoke about, the Tea Party, Lexington, Concord, Bunker Hill, and those other places, they are the ones that entered the school books, and these are the ones we learn about. And so they do have an importance in the public memory of the American Revolution. But as John Adams said, and I'm sure you both know the quote, he said, before a drop of blood was spilt at Lexington and Concord, this is a revolution that occurred in the hearts and minds of the people. And it really, that's what we want to commemorate with Revolution 250. The idea is that every community in Massachusetts played a role in not just sending soldiers to the front, but producing material of war, closing courts, preventing justices from being sat, sending representatives to the provincial Congress. I mean, in May of 1776, months before the Continental Congress debated independence, every community in Massachusetts was asked to hold a special town meeting and debate independence, and whether they would support that movement to independence with their lives, their liberties, and their fortunes. And so one of the things we hope to do is to collect up those town meeting records in a place. We know, for instance, because I have about a dozen copies so far, that in July of 1776, every community was asked to write the text of the Declaration of Independence into their town records so that it'd be part of the town record for all time. And so in all these town meeting books, you have these handwritten copies of the Declaration of Independence. And it's wonderful to see the spirit with which some town clerks attacked that requirement. Some of them desperately tried to make it look as close to the Dunlap broadside as possible. And other town clerks obviously took the tack of, I can't believe I have to write this whole thing into the book. So, but regardless, there are, we talk about the first printings of the Declaration of Independence and what that means to the people who have them. But here's a case where towns have purposely and with forethought gone back and written in the text of the Declaration of Independence as a founding document to their community as well.
Interesting, very interesting. Well, Jonathan, all of us know, all three of us know coordinators in the other 12 original states. They're beginning varying degrees and process of organizing and planning their 250th anniversaries. As a final note, do you have any suggestions? Since you guys are one of the first organizations, really, of all the states that are out of the box in planning and organizing these events for your own state, do you have any tidbits of wisdom or advice that you might offer to these other coordinators that are beginning to plan their events?
Well, look, none of the births of these types of commemorations are without difficulty, certainly, and even in Massachusetts, where we are so used to celebrating and commemorating this Revolutionary War history. We've been struggling for about 18 months now to get our state legislature to form a statewide commission to coordinate with the national commission, and they all agree that this is something they need to do. Every meeting we've had with legislators, they all, but in the grand list of priorities, this is where they struggle, because particularly now in the age of COVID, where there are so many issues that need to be resolved. So getting on that as soon as possible, finding the people who can be just as passionate as you are in carrying that torch through the state legislature. And coming back to Christian's earlier question too, just tying these two things together, finding partners that can help cross promote, help build a brand, can come to the table with possibilities for events and exhibits and educational programming. We work with the Freedom Trail Foundation and all of their partners. We work with the national parks throughout Massachusetts. We have the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum, which is actually a for-profit organization. The Mass Historical Society, of course, is a huge part of what we're doing from a logistical standpoint, and really just from a prestige standpoint as well. And of course, these, you do need a grassroots base to help carry you through. And so looking at the DAR and the SAR and the Society of Cincinnati, these are all organizations that have bodies of people who belong to them because of their personal connection through family and lineal ties to the American Revolution story. And so bringing all these together, and then, finding financial support. And that is, of course, the tough one. And we tend to turn towards our government leaders for things like this, because it's not necessarily, museums and historical field are not usually overflowing with extra money to support these kinds of programs. But everybody who participates in Revolution 250 makes a financial commitment to the organization, and it could be very modest. Some of them are very, very modest indeed, but it recognizes the needs of a greater organization to help push and promote the history over the next 6 to 7 years, or longer if you're down south or someplace.
Sure.
Jonathan, I just wanted to follow up quickly, because if somebody's watching this, or if there's a smaller organization or a larger organization that hears about Revolution 250 and is not involved, what can they do to get involved? Is there a website?
Yeah, absolutely. So revolution250.org. We're actually undergoing a little bit of a website refit in this work from home era. So you'll be seeing a new rollout shortly on our website as well. But the current website is up. Certainly reach out to us through the website. You can reach me through the Massachusetts Historical Society. Absolutely. Contact any of our partners who are listed on our website and find out what you can do to support their programming, and absolutely let's partner and get together, because over the next few years, when we start talking about some of the major events that are going to come down the road running through 2026, we're going to need all the hands possible. In many ways, it's like trying to gather the militia in 1775.
Sure.
You got to bring as many people together as possible in order to make it all work and be successful.
Sure.
Yeah, and I know I speak for Randy and myself when
Yep.
when I first met you at the conference Randy put together in Philadelphia that met at the Museum of the American Revolution for the American Revolution roundtables. I mean, Randy and I have since talked about the work you guys are doing. It's very impressive. We admire it. We'd love to help in any way we can and be a part of it. So I look forward to having you back on the show.
Yeah.
And Randy and I want to help as much as possible. So
and similarly, so Revolution 250, we just started our podcast about 2 months ago. We started off with Gordon Wood and have been strolling through the great collection of both scholars and people who work in public history telling this narrative. And so hopefully we'll be able to arrange for Christian and Randy to come on and give us another perspective on the American Revolution.
Well, sure.
Certainly, Joseph Warren deserves a lot deeper look for a lot of people, because I think, again, one of our focuses is on underrepresented stories. And while Joseph Warren may not be as underrepresented as some, there are, leaders, traditional leaders in the American Revolution that deserve further scrutiny. I think Warren is one. I think General Glover is another one who deserves a little bit. Same with Artemus Ward, whose house, by the way, still stands out in Shrewsbury and is now owned by Harvard College. But but we're also looking at the Native American experience, particularly the Stockbridge natives who came to support the siege of Boston in 1775, and we talk about the closure of the ports in 1774, and the Mashpee, the Wampanoag, gathered all of the currency they had in their town and sent it to Boston to help the poor and the indigent. And, it was about 12 shillings or something, which is, nothing in the grand scheme of the 18th century world, but it represented all of their hard currency. And I think that's amazing story that needs to be told. So there are lots of these little stories that we're going to be telling over the next 6 years. And I'm really excited because there's so much wonderful history here to share with the people across the country and get them to understand that the revolutionary story, we tend to make it very much about the sons of the patriots versus the redcoats. And that's at the heart of the story. But in reality, the Revolutionary War is a very complex and intricate tapestry. And the deeper you look at it, the more wonderful aspects to the story you can share. And they're not all happy stories. They're not all amazing stories, but they are a part of the rich and wonderful narrative of the American Revolution.
Sure. Well, you're certainly setting a standard for other states to follow, to say the least. And we're just delighted to have you with us. So that looks like all the time we had today, Christian and Jonathan, to discuss what I consider to be a very timely look at Massachusetts as you're in the process of organizing for the 250th. And so we'll hope you join us again and you'll come back again.
I'd love to be part of it.
Well, we want to thank Jonathan. Thank you, Randy. To our viewers, we've been talking with Jonathan Lane of the Massachusetts Historical Society, who is coordinating the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution in Massachusetts. We hope you enjoyed another in a series of interviews from the Dr. Joseph Warren Historical Society. Please consider subscribing, as well as we'll be continuing these discussions with various authors and experts. My name's Christian Despina, and on behalf of my colleague Randy Flood and myself, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. And Jonathan, we really appreciate what you're doing,
Absolutely.
Your passion for the history, and we hope it's infectious.
Thank you. I hope so too.
We'll see you again, hopefully. Thank you.
Yep.
Take care,
Thanks
guys.
so much. Yep.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.